Hey friends! Welcome to Spirit Club, a podcast and community that is all about doing the inner work to live an aligned and, dare I say, happy life. I'm your host, spiritual guide and intuitive, Angel Kelly, and I'm here to share my teachings along with messages passed on to me from higher consciousness. I've also got incredible guests in store to help you go down all those spiritual rabbit holes. So let's go! Welcome to the club! Welcome back to Spirit Club, and today on the podcast we are going to talk about aliens. You know, the topic that you want to talk about, but you're like, people will think I'm crazy if I talk about it. We will be doing that today, and I've got just the expert for you guys. Our guest today is Michelle Larson. Michelle is an energy healer and psychic medium who specializes in working with starseeds. You'll learn what that is, but, you know, stay tuned. So from her own personal experience of being abducted as a child to now primarily working with mothers and starseed children, Michelle is incredibly knowledgeable. So knowledgeable that we have preemptively decided to make this a two-part episode because I know you all love bite-sized episodes. So, welcome, Michelle.
Thank you for having me here. I'm super excited and always love talking about anything alien, anything ET, starseed, you name it. Like, so grateful to be here.
Here for it. And you know, I was like, you know, Michelle and I are recording after a long day of work and our jobs. And I was thinking like, thank God we're talking about something so exciting. Like, it's just going to jazz us, you know? I'm jazzed.
Yeah.
Okay, well, per usual, I'll have some icebreaker questions for you. The first being, what are your big three in astrology?
Ooh, I'm a Gemini sun, Capricorn moon, and a Sagittarius rising.
Oh, I don't think I knew. I knew the Gemini sun, but I don't think I knew the rest. Okay, you've got a nice balance there. Now, curious, Capricorn moon. Is Capricorn happy there? How's that feel? How's that manifest?
Well, in true Capricorn fashion, it's all fine. It's the perfect, you know, duck where they look fine, but they're like swimming underwater.
Right.
No, Capricorn, it's very driven and knows what it wants, which can get kind of hard in the emotional realm, in my experience. But also it's that like tough coat. Like, I'm good, yes. We're good. I'm good. So I've been excavating underneath of all that coding in the last like year and a half. Is what are emotions? How do we feel them? Like, let's be more human.
Right. Because you're missing some water here in your big three. And then the Gemini sun and the Sag rising, that might make things like, maybe like choosing is a little hard.
Choosing is hard.
Yeah. To put it lightly.
I can see it all. I can see both sides. I want all, both, this, that, and.
Yeah.
But then there's like that super serious Capricorn like logic.
Right.
Yeah.
Must choose. And you're like, I don't want to choose. I want to do that and that. Oh, now I want to do that.
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I love asking these questions because it helps me to understand, you know, like, I understand the signs at a high level, but when you put them into like moon rather than sun and all that sort of thing, it helps me to like see them represented for a person. And yeah, so thank you for sharing. So next question is, do you have a morning routine? And if so, what is it?
Well, I have two young children. So if I can wake up before them, I will sit and drink my hot mushroom coffee and do like morning pages from the Artist's Way, or kind of like a meditation, read a book, something like that. Often I'll have a little 3-year-old on my lap while I do that, but I can get away with it with him. Otherwise, if they're both up, we're like making breakfast, packing lunches, doing the morning routine, and then I'll do my morning pages like once I get home from the drop off.
Okay,
routine.
okay. So you can still kind of squeeze it in after that. Okay, that's nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
most days.
I mean,
If I don't get it in, it's like it gets there's just so much,
yeah.
so I have to channel and download it and get it out somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, morning pages are powerful. And do you like look back on them often? Because I find like when you do them daily, the times that I've done it, it's like you're so not conscious while you're doing them that it's like, it'd be good to go look back on.
Yeah, sometimes I'll like happen upon the journal and I'll like see it and I'm like, who wrote that? I wrote that. That was me. What was I even thinking? Like I'm like this cannot have been me. But often I just let them be.
Yeah.
Like just let them be, let them go. And then there's kind of that fine line between the morning dump and then like the morning download. And so like somewhere in there, if there's juice in the download, then I'm like, ooh, extract, put it in
Right.
like a different spot or star it, circle it, so I
Right.
come back to it. But there's so many
Yeah.
pages I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Some things are meant to be held on to and some things are meant to just to dump, as you say. Especially as a Gemini sun, she's got a lot going up there.
So much.
Okay, cool. Next question. So we're all about personal growth here on Spirit Club, and so would love to know any teachers, coaches, mentors, authors that have had a big impact on your personal development.
Such a good, it's so great. So, Rebecca Campbell has been one that really comes through. Even precursor to Rebecca Campbell was really Gabrielle Bernstein. Like, I kind of like date myself here, even though I'm not that old, but in spiritual realm, I've been in this for a while. And really, Gabby Bernstein was the first person talking about anything spiritual,
And she
like way back
mainstreamed
when.
it.
So it's like, she made it mainstream. Yep. So those are kind of fun if you're very new to it, very beginner. Rebecca Campbell is fun because she made kind of starseeds hit the map. Like she was one of the first people who really brought that into another mainstream field and kind of normalized it, started having books. Like I'll recommend some of her books sometimes to clients where they're like, where do we learn about starseeds? I'm like, there's nothing, but Rebecca Campbell has like 4 books. So
Right.
have fun.
Yeah, there's nothing.
There is like nothing, yeah. And then definitely, Nikki Novo, as we all, our Queen
Shout
Mother.
out to Queen Mother every
Yep,
episode.
every episode, yeah. But just in the way that she can really reach everyone where they're at, and then just give them the foundational spiritual tools to then grow upon or stay right there, right? It's like there's not like you have to reach a certain level. It's like here you go.
What do you
Choop.
need? Yeah. What do
Yeah,
you need
yeah.
to get where you want to go? Yeah. Great. Okay. Thank you. Okay, and now let's end with a little magic. So we'll start with declaring something that you are currently letting go of.
Ooh. I'm letting go of playing small.
Great. Perfect. Perfect.
I know a lot of things, but I often downplay them a lot.
Yes, okay. And just so everyone knows, Michelle and I did a mini read before this, and I feel like that's very in line with the message that came through. So good. Okay, so we're letting go of playing small, and then what are we calling in?
I feel like more gratitude, like just really feeling that just appreciation and gratitude for the wisdom, the gifts, the knowledge, the insights that continually pour through me because I realize that is not always usual, even though it feels very normal for me. And then calling forward, I don't know why warmth is showing up, but warmth,
Warmth.
like just
As you
yeah,
as
some
we
heat.
step into the winter, heat things up a little bit. Well, thank you for that reminder with gratitude. As soon as you were saying it, I was like, oh, that's a good one. Like to your point, like even, one example being this work we do, and sometimes, you get into doing it like a job and you forget how special that is. And last week I was doing a reading on Halloween in the morning before I left for my 9 to 5. So I'm like doing this reading at like 5 in the morning. And I just felt in that moment, I think because it was Halloween and I was just so grateful to like be a mystic in this lifetime. I was like, oh my gosh, I get to do this on Halloween before I go to work, like bringing gratitude back to it. And I sometimes forget to do that, especially with readings. So good reminder. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody. Oh gosh. There is so much to talk about. And I think, we start by focusing on you, Michelle, and your story and your path. And, if you feel comfortable sharing and safe to share here, I would love to hear the story of your abduction as a child.
Yeah. So thank you for having me on, creating this space to share this, even because it's such a weird thing. It is so weird. But yeah, so as a child, there were many, I had experienced many abductions, but nobody knew that they were happening when I was little. So there were just kind of weird events or weird like things that just would keep happening kind of habitually, kind of continually, and just over time, my family just kind of chalked them up to like, this girl has weird sleeping things and life shall move on. And of course, like I did a plant medicine journey last fall and relived chronologically a good series of these experiences. And so inside of that, like 18 months was like the earliest that I got through the plant medicine ceremony. So these started very early, which my mother will say, like, you just didn't sleep. Like, you were just a baby who was always awake, always in your crib, your eyes wide open, not crying, but just like wide awake as a baby. So I'm kind of like, well, maybe I was already having some of these things happen inside, kind of your like 0 to 2 age range. And then it probably, I don't know the exact age, but like when you're like old enough to maybe move around the house, but you shouldn't be. I was waking up, we lived in like a 3-level, so basement and then 2 stories, farmhouse, and we all slept on the top level, creaky steps, creaky doors, like you name it, and I would wake up in the basement screaming. But like, I went to bed with all my sisters, like in our room, and like, this was just a pattern. It's like, oh, it's just another night terror. Like, I always wanted to sleep with my parents. Some nights would let me, some nights wouldn't let me. And it just kept happening. And it's like, I don't know why this girl keeps waking up in the basement, scared out of her mind, but da-da-da-da-da-da. So that was this continual pattern that happened forever. And then,
like, as in until, like, because you were so young, you probably didn't have a lot of words. Mm-hmm. Did it happen up until, like, an age where you could, like, speak and describe things?
I think it was happening, like, from what I relived in the plant medicine journey, it happened up until, like, 6 or 8 or so. And then I have 3 sisters, but 2 are older, and one of them has, like, vivid memories, which she never understood. So it's, like, an interesting thing where I had lots of memories growing up that I could never place in a context. Mm-hmm. I didn't understand them. I had weird, like, psychological things where I was like, why do I like things in 2? And why am I scared of anything flying over me? And they're just weird tics, you're just like, I'm just weird, whatever. But my older sister has a memory of being like frozen and not being able to move and all of these big green lights.
Oh. Okay.
And so she was like, yeah. So when all of this was going on, my older sisters, who are 3 years older and 5 years older than me, they were old enough to then have memories of like something was happening. Because that's another question people get is like, well, if this was happening, like, where was your family? How did your family not notice? where where were your parents? Like, oh, you're sleeping, like right there, like right in the same room or right across the room or whatever it is. And then in my, yeah, there's so many. But inside the experiences of it, and like I'm happy to go into like all of the depth of it, but for maybe kind of like the listener level here, we can just do like superficial level, even though it's still gonna be quite a bit. I was being taken to different sacred sites, different secret sites. So sacred sites, secret sites, and then up to ships. So like there was kind of this revolution of places that they would bring me to, and they were testing me. They were always testing me to see if I could make them stop what they were doing. And they'd make me watch these like very horrific things, and I kept failing their test. I either like couldn't make them stop, or I wasn't strong enough to make it stop, or like they didn't like whatever I was doing. I failed their
They
test. It's
wanted
kind of
you
the
to be
word
able to
I
make
got.
it stop. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And sorry, back to the three places. When you say sacred sites, do you mean here on Earth or elsewhere?
Mostly on Earth. Yeah. Mostly sacred Earth
Okay.
sites.
So
And then
things like
secret sites on
temples
Earth
or
too.
like Stonehenge, stuff like that.
Yep. Different temples, usually kind of like your cryptic type temples, where you're like, it feels weird here, or like Mayan temple was a one, like not like your
I
beautiful
see. Okay,
ones.
okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Continue. So they were putting you through tests and you couldn't make them stop what they were doing.
Yep. And so as a child, like I didn't quite understand what was going on. I just knew I had these scary dreams and I'd wake up in the basement. Like that's all that I could remember, even though I had weird memories of things, weird fears of things, and nobody was asking, but I also wasn't saying anything about them
Yeah.
either. So kind of just like continued to live my life, as any like 6-year-old girl would do, and then was super fascinated with like the X-Files, aliens, like was super into it, where I was like, this makes sense. I grew up in the country, we'd lay on the trampoline all night long and just watch the stars, like trying to find UFOs. Like who does this? Like
I love it.
why do we do that? And then it wasn't until I think I was 22. I think that's when I first found energy healing. But inside that, the woman who did the energy healing on me was like, I don't know how you're going to take this, but like, you have been abducted by aliens in this lifetime. And I was like, it makes sense. It all makes sense now. And I was like, then like, it was kind of the floodgates of confirmation, information, validation of like, everything then made sense for where I really thought I was crazy as a child.
Yeah, and you must have like you're a child, so you would get discredited for everything you say, and then you chalk it up to being bad dreams or whatever that happens to be. But there must have been like, or maybe you and your sister didn't talk about it till you were older, but the confirmation of both of your sisters also having these experiences, when did that come to light?
That was once I had this energy healing, and I was like, oh my gosh, sisters, like we have to talk. And they were like, no way, I have weird memories of being frozen, green lights, and then like
my God.
stuff, like, and they were like, we couldn't see anything, we couldn't move, which is such a we'll probably get into it, but it's such a gray alien tactic. Like they can freeze you, and they're very good at abductions. So it's like they get hired out for abductions. They do the abductions. They were definitely my abductees. I've had quite a few. This was before plant medicine, but like total recalls of different events in my old bedroom, in my bunk bed, with their fingers, like just they're like in the room where I'm like, oh, I'm not making this up. Like there's no
Yeah.
way. Like
And does it like to recall, to talk about it? Like obviously you've done a lot of work on this. Does it like scare you to this day since that's such a childhood trauma?
it's very like it's not activating in like a fearful way. It definitely helped. I went through the fear processing in my like plant medicine journey last fall, and so that has really helped just like get clear, remind myself that I survived, remind myself we can live, like all of those things through it. But there is like a palpation, you know, where I'm like, oh yeah, like that's real. We're not just talking about like a cool book I read.
Yeah, totally.
And that's a little trippy, where it's like, oh my goodness. But I will also say, from doing spiritual development, really learning about our gifts and our sovereignty as a soul, I feel so solid in my soul, in my protection, in my sovereignty, that I'm like, oh, like, yes, that's terrifying. But then also, had anyone in my household known anything about spirituality, they could have stopped it instantaneously.
Oh, I feel
So it's also like pulls me into my mission even more.
like as you were saying that, I was like, I feel that in you. Like I feel that you have created safety, essentially safety for you, safety for your family, and that's why, like, you know, as soon as you have that, like nothing can take that away from you, not even aliens. And your parents, have you shared this with them? Are they able to receive this kind of information?
I honestly don't know if I have. My dad is passed now, so I'm like, I don't know if I ever shared that with him. He definitely was someone who could believe things, so I think he would probably be safer to play it with than my mom, who was just kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, you do your thing over there, but like I'll do my thing over here.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I want to just like, I want to highlight, thank you for sharing that, because it's obviously very vulnerable, and I'm sure for listeners it's really scary to hear. So I just want to highlight something that Michelle ended with, which is that like you absolutely can protect yourself. And Michelle and I are going to talk about that for sure. So don't worry. But so like, okay, where do I begin? Why do you think that you and your sisters were chosen? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, I like, sometimes you're like, why me, or why this? And honestly, the more I go into my, like, part of my purpose being here on Earth, part of my mission, it's really like, because I'm up to so much as a soul and as a light, that you're almost more attractive to put out. If you're a big bright light, which is a generational witch wound that we all carry forward. We're like, can we really shine bright? Can we really show our gifts? Because then we're a beacon for nefarious energies to extinguish. And do we want that? Do we not? So I think that's been part of it too, is like really the weight of the mission and the brightness of the soul to get hijacked, because then you can't really do your mission. If I would have stayed in that loop, if I could have been corrupted or whatever, I think maybe if I could have stopped what they were doing, they would have just kept me.
Like there's part of me that thinks like, oh, well, perhaps they like also have a curiosity about your power as they see your light, and so that's why they're sort of testing you to be like, what is this power, and how do we extract?
Yeah, another element to it, and it's very different. I've read and done healings for many different versions of interference, abductions, things, right? Like anything that happens in that realm. Like I've done a lot of readings for it. Sometimes they are simply looking from a experimental level. They just want to know what our starseed or hybrid or human genes do in the Earth environment.
Just like the same way that we would be like watching animals and maybe extracting them, or maybe like tracking them or things like that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like, when we take these cattle and we bring them to Brazil, how do they do? Because it's hotter and it's this and it's that, and we're just going to draw samples, observe, take some back. Like it's absolutely in that way. Those aren't as gruesome of experiences, but you still can opt out of them. You don't have to be in the experimental trials.
Okay. So you have worked with a
Yeah.
lot of clients who have also been abducted, or what were these other words you used? Interfered?
Yeah, if there's interference. So if, like another spirit or entity or kind of like attachment maybe comes into their field and starts to manipulate your energy. That'd be more like the interference, the
Okay.
attachments. I've seen like ET implants as well, or like different tracker devices. It, there's a whole gamut of it. But there's just many different ways. And sometimes we have contracted into them, sometimes we've consented to them on different lifetimes, future lifetimes. And so it gets very intricate when we
Right.
diffuse that
Right.
connection.
And when clients come to you, do they know, or are you picking up on it, or is it some combination of that? Because I feel like, the general public, it wouldn't know. Maybe they have a feeling, but
Yeah. Yeah, most of the time it's like I've never had, maybe one person I've had where they're like, I know I have a chip in here and it's from an abduction. I've had one
oh
person
wow.
come to me for that.
Okay.
That's it though. And like
Yeah.
hundreds of readings. And like they'll come in and they know something's off in their field. They can set, it's kind of just that you're like, there's something like out of balance here. There's some disharmony. What is going on? Most of these clients are on a spiritual path. It's like rare that I'd get someone in like a
Right.
first time reading who's like never even thought about what a crystal is, right? Like that's super rare, and but I don't really attract a lot of that type of energy. And then upon doing the reading, kind of going in and doing like the research of their energy, it's like, oh, okay, this is in your field. Let's talk about it. Maybe it's this certain age, maybe it's here, and they're just like similar to my experience of like my
Right.
whole life now makes sense.
Yes.
Like, oh, from that moment on,
Yeah.
oh,
Okay.
like, and so it's like it's super validating and confirming for what you didn't know you
Right.
already knew.
Yes. Ooh, that gave me goosebumps. Getting a lot of those on this episode. Okay, so for those who listening who maybe might resonate with having something, having experienced something, having something in their field, whatever it happens to be. So having the feeling of like something's off in my energy. And then maybe could it be, are there any common, like might things manifest in your physical body in some way if you've been interfered with?
Yeah, it depends on the level of interference, for sure. But if you have, let's say you have an entity, which is the worst type of interference, that is like the deepest depths you can get. It's almost like your energy and your life force is being siphoned out of you. So you think of it like a giant
Right.
spiritual parasite that is just robbing you of nutrients, robbing you of light. And you're just kind of like, every day I just have less and less, no matter how much I replenish. And then at a certain point, like you get really, really dark. Like your mind starts to go into like dark thoughts, dark patterns. And you're like, this isn't me, but this is very real inside of me. That's kind of your like
Yeah.
flag, like something's
Okay.
really off here. Some maybe like generational things that can bleed through and come through are more like there's something in my field. I know this is off, but it doesn't feel like it's mine, but I'm living it.
Yeah.
Right? Where you're like, oh, my mom at 26 had the same ankle surgery, but it was after, right? Like some of it's genetic, but some of it's like really just passed through our generational
Right.
lineage.
And then some like clues that perhaps you've been abducted. Like would someone who's been abducted perhaps just think these things were all just a dream? If they have any memory of it, like will it feel like a dream?
Often it will feel like a dream, but what I've thought, like, like you can think of a bad dream, but it feels just like very mental. If do you know what I mean? Where it's like, oh, I had a bad dream, and like my mind starts
Yes.
thinking about it, versus like my
Right.
whole body hurts and has a visceral
Right.
response to this. It's like, why is there resonance for that in my field? Sometimes I feel this watching certain TV shows. I don't really watch that much, but when I do, I'm like, this has never happened in my life. Why am I actually shaking right now? Why is my heart hurting? Versus like,
Right.
ooh, that's hard
Yeah.
to see.
Yeah.
Ooh, that that's similar to when you think of bad dreams you've had, where you're like, my whole body somatically is having a response, or that was a really bad dream.
Right.
That was really messed up,
Yes.
and you forget about it. You can forget about bad dreams. You don't really forget about spiritual
True. You
experiences.
do forget. You forget dreams. I mean, that's the thing. Even we want to remember them, we forget them.
Right? No matter how hard we try.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was a real. I've been going down like the Netflix, any docuseries on encounters, whatever, because I'm just sometimes I get really interested in wanting to go down the rabbit hole, and knowing that we had an episode, I was like, I'm going down the rabbit hole. I'm so excited. And I was thinking about, like, there are so many examples, Michelle, of sightings, of encounters, of abductions. And the first question I had is, like, every time there's the story, there's the person who had the experience, and then there's the critic, and there's the people that are like, let me tear it down. And I was listening to that, and I was like, what's up with that? Like, why do we want to tear down that so bad? Is it because it scares us too much? Or is it because there's another force at play that's like shutting it down? So wondering what your take is on that.
Yeah. On one hand, there is, on like a government level, they have done studies. This was, oh gosh, don't quote me, but I think it was like in the 60s, 50s, or 60s even. Like it was quite a while ago, where they polled or did a study to see if the United States population could handle that aliens exist and that there's life on other planets. And from this like study thing or poll, whatever it was, I'm like, why is it blanking on me what that's called? They determined that it would send everyone into like a frantic craze and that we couldn't tolerate it. So it's kind of like, okay, I guess we can't tell them. So then there's been these huge government operatives to keep that whole agenda very, very quiet. A lot of money gets poured into it, definitely in the United States, but just about every country has a secret space program, the big countries anyways, where they're doing work, they're doing explorations, they're doing experiments, they have deep secret bases, like deep underground military bases, where they're doing a lot of stuff, and they would like the people to be none the wiser. So whenever there are stories, it's kind of like it's easier to believe the newsman who thinks that the farmer is crazy than it is to believe the farmer guy with the, it's like Roswell. It's like they're weather balloons. Yeah. Like, really? Weather balloons that weigh 200 tons? Like, I don't think so, but...
And it's also like, what is this farmer's agenda? He's just... this guy's, I don't know, I was watching some guys, like, having a fire with a couple of buddies. He's got no agenda, like, but, okay. So, that was in the 60s. Okay, now it kind of feels like they're starting to leak it into Hollywood, leak it into our Netflix. It's becoming more like, do you think they're preparing us? Government, the powers that be, Hollywood, preparing us for the truth to come out?
Yeah, I do think that there is a soft disclosure movement that's happening. And some of it is because I love Elizabeth April is like the powers that were. Yeah, so we don't give them the power, right? The powers that were. But like these powers that were once in control, really don't want us to know about it, because then it will turn so many stones over for like how much else they've been hiding. So it's like, if you've been lying about this, it's kind of like when you find out that...
I know exactly what you're going to say.
But like, like that Santa Claus isn't real. You're like, what else have mom and dad or my parents or my whoever been
Right.
telling me that isn't real? You're like, wait a minute. You know, it's kind of that like, ooh, if that's real. And then also when it comes to money and taxes and funds and operations, and you're like, wait, if that's real, and you know that that's real, how much money are we paying into something we
Right.
have no idea we're paying into? And then people want to get involved with, diplomatic, like where
Right.
are we going and
Right.
why are we going? And
Yeah.
so there is self disclosure for sure happening. And there's lots of different theories around like how a big disclosure would happen, or even how to quietly, but also not in a blame way, have a giant disclosure that doesn't make the governments look bad.
Yeah, because wasn't there a whistleblower thing maybe like a year ago? Military guy. Yeah, and so like
Stephen
what, we
Greer.
just walked away from that? We're all like, oh yeah, that was amazing. Next. Like it's just kind of strange to me that we just stepped away from that information.
Yeah. Well, and then it's kind of funny too. A lot of that I feel like just shows maybe where we're at as a society, where we're like, oh yeah, oh you've been
Yeah.
studying UFOs, cool. We're not crazy. I'm not quitting my job tomorrow. It's like, cool,
Yeah.
cool, cool, bro. Like, you tell us when they're gonna land, and like people just went on with their life versus being like,
Right.
do you understand this? And a good majority, because I listen to those hearings, because
Totally.
why not? It's
Yeah.
like my niche. I gotta listen to it. But a lot of it's like, oh, we cannot confirm that, but we can talk in a
Yeah.
skiff. We can talk in a skiff. I'm like, this is like no fun, but also if you can't just say no right now, then like
I know
we
it's
can
like
read
when
between
someone's
the
like, I plead the
lines.
fifth, you're like, so yes.
So yes, right, yeah. So it's happening. Like he's been trying for so many years to get all this stuff to come out. The fact they got it to a congressional hearing is pretty big. Um, and again, it's like the media wants to crash down on some of those military officers too, where they're just making it up or they're just in it for money. It's like, who's gonna pay them money? Like the reptilians? Like they ain't got
Right.
money.
And then like would any no, I'm not going to go into that question yet. It's a little too far. Anyway, but I wanted to share that like it's starting to become a little more mainstream, obviously because of media and what's coming up on TV and stuff like that. But so I work at like a very conservative kind of company. And, I don't share this part of myself there. But there's one driller, and he comes into my office and he's like, he's an older gentleman. And he just knew that I would be open to the conversation. And he starts showing me pictures of UAPs that he's been filming from his backyard. And now we have this like secret dialogue that we have. Just like come in and sounds like we're talking about drilling. We just closes the door and I'm like, I love this. This is what's like people want to talk about it, and it's getting a little bit more normal because the soft disclosure that you mentioned. So, and then the other thing I was thinking was like,
Yeah.
why? Like obviously ETs, aliens, whatever, can show themselves. Like it's not like they're not here or haven't been here or anything like that. Why would they choose not to? Earlier, more.
That's a That's a great question. There is like I forget I forget which Star Trek movie this is from, but they get in trouble with I forget what it's called, but they get in trouble with like the head haunch because they show themselves to this native planet, and it changes the course of their evolution. And so like they were just supposed to go in, do their secret little mission, help the volcano not explode. I'm like, this was a new age
Yeah.
Star Trek. It wasn't the old ones. But it's very similar in kind of our dialogue with ETs. If they just show themselves, are we consenting to it? That's a big conversation on like a high level in the Galactic Federation. Is do we believe that the people really want us to come? Do we have consent for them to come because they don't intervene with free will and they don't want to mess
Right,
with
like as a
evolutionary processing
collective, is that getting in
as
the
a
way of
collective?
our natural evolution? I see.
And so if it's kind of like if we all agree on some way that we're like ready and we want to see them, I bet that they'll start showing up more and more and more. But our consciousness is rising. It's like undeniable. Even people like who don't understand it are like, it's happening. This is so weird. And we have way more sightings, and we have way more like just random things where people are like yes and yes and yes and yes and then we're so interconnected where it's like it's not like these camcorder
Right,
crappy recordings anymore. You're like, this is someone's Instagram feed,
right,
and it's viral in 2 seconds. Like, you can't even
right.
take that down fast
Yeah,
enough.
I know. Now we have the tech. It's funny you say that because Shane and I were watching some movie the other day, a 90s movie. And there's like a party happening at the movie and some girls dancing on the table. And Shane goes, "Oh my gosh, look." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Nobody has their phones out taping her." And I was like, "Oh my God, yeah, you can do things and no one would know about them." The parties I went to as a
Nobody
teenager,
would know.
zero footage. There might have been one of those like clicky, like, and then you take the film in and it's the worst. You didn't get to like validate it before you took it.
Yeah, the like best and the worst, like heaven forbid someone exposed it to light and the whole reel is
It's
ruined.
gone forever.
Like, no, our whole fashion shoot was on that camera. Like,
Facts, facts. I mean, everybody knows we had great
that's
90s fashion. Okay.
it's like,
Might be not. Oh,
hey,
God. It's
it's
back.
coming back.
It's back. It's
Like,
almost back and gone again.
if we'd have kept,
Now I'm seeing some like
yeah,
2000s stuff and I'm like, ew, no, that stuff's really bad. It's still bad. Don't bring it back.
worse than the 90s. Don't do
Okay,
it.
there's something that you mentioned.
Oh my god.
Galactic Federation. Can you explain to folks listening who and what that is?
Yep. So it's basically the United Nations of the intergalactic everything. So, like, of the entire universe, all of the planets, all the things that exist, they are maybe like a governing force, governing body for that. There's been quite a bit of controversy around the Galactic Federation because there are some channels who believe they've been dubbed out by AI. There's some who believe that they aren't in operation anymore. They're actually the Galactic Federation of Light. So if you ever find yourself channeling into it, just demand and declare that they reveal truth. And you will see who and what it is, if it's the AI version, if it's the true version, or what you're actually dealing with. But I'm like a something, like a high ranking something at the Galactic Federation, the real one. So it's like, they always yell at me when I go there because Earth isn't ready for more star
Did you say
seeds.
you're a high ranking something something? Oh, I believe that. I mean, I did a reading for you once and I saw you as like an officer of
Yeah.
some sort. So that checks out. So so do you sit with the Galactic Confederation, Galactic Federation sometimes and channel? Okay. And what types of
I do.
things do you channel or talk about?
Yeah, we most of the time, so this is around the lines of doing a lot of work with the starseed children and the parents who have starseed children here. I also do a lot of
Okay.
work with like infertility cases, so in like a spiritual and a physical way. And most of these people who have infertility issues have like a starseed
Okay.
soul who wants to come in. So it's like creating a bigger gap, perhaps, in their journey than just an earthly. But as it go up and we sit in on it, it's kind of like, how can we raise the consciousness of this planet to help people wake up, to help heal it, and to really create space for these hybrid children that need to come through, these starseed children that need to come through, and really kind of create that balance back inside of the universe. So the Earth is a very big it's a melting pot. We have a ton of different races here, a ton of different agendas here, energies. There's so many things that really is beautiful about Earth, but it also makes it really convoluted to try and shift because there's so many moving parts. So that is something that often comes through when I sit in up there, is kind of like, what's going on down there? How can we do this faster? Like, we need to make this happen. And then often on like a deep quantum level is kind of like the elite agenda or the deep state agenda, and how we can combat that.
The elite.
So the powers that were. The powers that were. How can we keep them moving out?
Okay, so here on Earth, from my reading, from what I understand, our own DNA has starseed roots, like Lyrian, and, you know, like, we obviously didn't start from nothing. There was some, what's the word I want to use? There was some contribution from, right? So our DNAs are kind of like already mixed. Is that fair to say? We're like part primate, part starseed. And then you also have, like, as souls, as the various souls here on Earth, our souls have all sorts of different heritage, whether it be from Earth or from another star nation. And then would you also say that you also have, living here on this planet, aliens? Yeah, probably. Okay.
Probably.
And did I miss anything there? Yeah. Like, you know, I'm kind of like breaking down the melting pot that you're talking about and how it's all like a mishmash. And when I learned about it, I was like, oh, we all have. Okay, I see. All right.
Yeah. No, I think that was a great way to describe it. Yeah. It's pretty accurate and very layered, you know, like you did a great job of explaining the layers of, like, the soul level, the human body level, the stardust level. You know?
And, you know, I'm realizing we've been, like, using these terms, and there may be some folks who are like, well, wait, go back to the beginning. So, alien, extraterrestrial, starseed, is there any, like, any differences? Should we stop using the word alien? How do they feel about that? Can you clarify?
I have always found that alien is a bit like disrespectful, because it's kind of like we're aliens to them. Yeah. Like, alien is just like not belonging. You know, and so it's a little bit like we are all one in, like, a greater consciousness way on soul levels. So alien is very, like, removing dismissal already. So they don't typically like it, but they're also like tomato, you know, but I generally don't call them that. Extraterrestrial is like something else, right? Like, they don't mind being called ETs. They don't mind being called, like, whatever star system or star race they're from. It's not as it's not, like, as important, you know, necessarily. A lot of them just come through with names, and then it's like, what would I call you, a Canadian? No, we call you Angel. Like, we're like, not like that Taryn, you know, that Taryn from Canada. We're like, your name's Angel. Right? It's like, we love you. And then starseed, like, this one is beautiful because really this refers to, at least in the way that I often use it, is on a soul level. So it's like your soul as a star seed has had different lifetimes on other planets, and you bring that planetary wisdom, that experience, and that frequency into human existence on this planet.
Exactly. Okay.
So it's like, we are star seeds, right? And then we have extraterrestrials who maybe visit you in meditation, or are flying around orbits and doing all these other things.
Okay, I think that's a good segue to get into starseeds, star nations, those types of things. So, for a lot of listeners, this may be the first time they're hearing the word starseed. So, I think if you're open to it, it would be helpful to just highlight some of the big or main or common star nations that like souls have come here from. And we could talk a bit about those. How's that sound?
Yeah, that sounds great. It's funny, it reminds me of like Africa, like the Big Five. It's like,
Yeah, let's talk about
we're
the
going
Big
to see
Five.
the Big Five. And it's like,
Oh my gosh, that episode was so fun and mind-blowing. I hope you guys were just as blown away as I was for part 1 with Michelle Larson, where we talked about all things alien ET. And next week in part 2, we're going to dive more into the soul side of things, so starseeds. And very importantly, we're going to talk about how to protect yourself. So make sure you check out part 2. See you then.